Welcome everyone. Yes, I'm working on the intro. The song was gonna play, but I don't want to waste any time. We have a special guest today, and you read in the title. You know who this is. Reasons I'm broke. The legend, the award-winning podcast. Reasons I'm broke. Broke. Ugh. How you doing, man?
Hey Kojay, hey everyone out there, and we're matching hats. Look at you. You're so kind, dude.
I
Thank you.
had to. I had to. I was actually looking for the shirt I have, the one with the California flag behind it.
Yeah, yeah.
But my problem is I have so many black shirts. It's like I'm still in my
Me
gothic
too.
phase back then, right? It's hard to find everything. And then when I look for it, I find a show like, ooh, this is cool. So I'm just bringing Last Dragon today.
There you go.
So yeah, I gotta represent.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on though. I thank you so much. This is awesome. I love your channel. You've been a friend of mine and of the movement for years now. And as I mentioned on my show years ago, you are a pillar of the Restore the Snyder Verse movement. So it's always an honor to talk to you, not just on here, but outside as well.
Oh, thanks, man. That makes me feel better because I screwed up the times, and that's the reasons I'm sorry.
That's some
I'm like,
inside baseball right there.
yeah, there you go. Oh man. So for those of you who don't know, you're gonna see all the links in the description below. Uh Daniel, you're the man of reasons I'm broke because, well, first off, your podcast is amazing. I like how it feels like a legit radio show because I grew up in the 90s and I miss listening to the radio, even talk radio or even the DJs. They would have a segment of 30 minutes talking stuff before they play music. And I just like that voice too. You have such a great voice for it too. And the content you go over is great. So I just want to give people a beautiful introduction from you. Like, how did you get into this and what started it? And how did you come up with the name?
So, getting into what you were talking about, radio broadcasting, back when I was in college in Illinois, there was a little radio station at the college in which students could come in and do a radio show. And at that time, I was trying to become a DJ, to try to do more DJing. I had done a little club performance here and there, nothing huge and nothing on the regular.
Wait,
But
wait,
then
like you're
I
mixing music and all that and everything?
correct, yeah, like house music. At the time,
Turntables?
I don't know, it wasn't, well, digital turntables at that time. It
Oh,
was
okay.
changing to computerized turntables, but I know
But you still
exactly what
had
you're
the
talking about.
beat match with the
Correct.
pick,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
With your
absolutely.
actual ear.
Yes. Yeah, you can do it with
That's
your
a
ear.
skill.
Later on, they started coming out. I don't know what the program is called. I saw other DJs when I was getting out of it. They had like two streaming things on the side and they can see the beats and they can they were on another level by the time I was getting out of it, but I know what you're talking about because now you
Yeah.
can cue it automatically or something and it'll just put it on there for you.
Yeah,
You
it's
just
like
count by eights, right? Yeah, but back then you counted by eights and if you fucked up, you can I curse on this? Sorry.
oh yeah, you can. This is a
Okay,
safe
cool.
free zone. You're in my corner, I'm in your corner.
Perfect.
Yeah,
So
you can curse, I don't fucking care.
and the college, I came across that a little board, a little piece of paper that said if you wanted to be a radio DJ, that sign up here or show up here, and I did. So that was an opportunity to play music for the college. They did not have software to mix music live or anything like that, but I could bring a CD and put it into the software. Anything that was pre-recorded, put it on there, or use their library of music. So I just kept adding EDM songs onto their library. I don't know how many hundreds they have now, if they still have it. And it turned into a talk show eventually of my friends coming over. Back when The Office was airing new episodes, we would stop halfway through. We would record for 30 minutes, put it on the air live, stop and watch The Office right in the little office outside the door, and then go back into the radio station and continue the talk. So it was something that was always fun for me. And then I stopped for a few years once I moved to Florida and then discovered that there was a thing called podcasts. One of my coworkers listened to Kevin Smith's at the time, which was huge. That was probably the biggest name I had heard at that time. So I
Mm.
checked out Kevin Smith's show because he talked about Batman, and I'm a big DC Batman fan. And from there, I was like, okay, he kept talking about podcasting, how anyone can do it. That's his big thing, is encouraging people to make films, to make a podcast. Looked into it, started doing my own. I'm like, all right, let me try to do what I did back in college, change it up, of course, because it's not a radio station. There's editing. It's not all live. And that was my creative outlet. And I still did like these side mixes here and there, but the music kind of went aside. And then I did the podcast as a regular hobby, which is now my only hobby as a dad because all video games and all that stuff, there's only so much time when you're a dad. So in my case, I've hung on to the podcast.
That's kind of cool because the podcast it like branches to all the stuff you like.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I'm getting to this for my podcast.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing is I get to talk to guys like you or to the regulars on the show and talk about gaming, talk about movies, things that I'm no longer playing or I can't play, but I can ask them about. So I'm kind of living all of that through them, and I'm able to keep up in that way.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because following everybody, like I keep up with my friends who are really good in Star Wars and manga and then comic books, pro wrestling. It's like I keep up through them, and it's really cool. I like it. We kind of all bring each other up.
Absolutely.
I love it. So how'd you come up with Reasons I'm Broke?
That one was all Kelly, my wife. So she co-hosted the show with me for the first 8 years. We hit over 10 years this year, but for the first 8 years, she was the weekly co-host. And she was like, I thought he would do this for a couple years, but no, like we just kept going. And finally, she couldn't do it because of her full-time job and being a mom on top of that. But she's the one who came up with that. Just on the way we were going back and forth on different names, and she's like, "How about the Reasons I'm Broke?" And I laughed my ass off, and I'm like, "That's it right there." And if I could do it again, maybe I'd do a more DC or superhero like name, just so it doesn't sound like it's a finance show or something like that. But people still love it, and it's stuck with it. So I'm like, all right, people know by now if they've seen me on Twitter, they know, okay, that's the DC guy or the Batman guy.
Yeah, I love it. It's just a brilliant name, because it feels like it's not just a name, but it's something I feel like we can all relate. Like I'm trying to get it. I'm like, oh, should I get this figure? I do have this deal coming up, but it's right there before me.
Yeah, just buy it. Don't even think about it.
See, Reasons I'm Broke right here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Oh man, so shoot, man, you're into a lot of stuff like video games, comic books, and movies. What would you say is like your top tier, or which one above the other, or is it just like all one?
Yeah, these days it would be movies because especially now with streaming services like HBO Max, Netflix, I can curate lists and catch up on movies that I never was able to watch before, TV shows, content. I mean, you and I grew up in a similar era of we didn't have streaming. We didn't have access where we can reach into this little computer in our pocket and pull up whatever thing we wanted to watch then. It was whatever was on television at that time. You turned the 1 to 8 channels, and whatever was on, that's what you watched. And if you could remember, then you would know, okay, at 7 p.m., they always play this. Or Urkel, for example, was one of my go-tos. Or Family Matters, So
I love
all of
Family
that
Matters,
stuff.
man.
Yeah, and now, so for me today, it is movies. It used to be games. It used to be more comics when I managed the comic book shop, and I still pick up comic books, but I no longer get a discount on them. And the comic landscape has changed a lot, both Disney and AT&T. They're
How
now
so? Because
printing.
I haven't actively collected comics in a while since the pandemic, really.
And right around that period, about a year or two before then, and definitely after the pandemic, DC changed all of the printing. Now you can go to next time you go to your comic shop, pick up a single issue, and you'll see that the books are split in half. So they print them to fit digital format. And the reason they do that is because they now get a format of, okay, from the Disney or AT&T, Warner Brothers Discovery these days, they have a panel format of the page has to fit perfectly in half so that we can better format it for digital. They are now made so that they serve tablets and phones first before print, and it didn't used to be that way.
Oh wow, yeah.
You know
Because
what
I
I'm
remember we
talking
had
about?
to
Where
move the camera and then open and
yes,
look in the. Whoa, that's a
not
trip.
anymore, not anymore. Yeah,
Dang.
indie books, some indie books will still have that where they have the freedom to do any panels they'd like, splash pages, all that stuff. But you look at DC and Marvel, and you will see that you can almost run a line straight across on the comic book of like splitting it in half. You can almost predict what the panels are going to look like. And it's a shame, but it's an evolving art. I might be a
Yeah.
dinosaur. I might be, whatever, but I've seen a lot of those changes and a lot more digital artwork too. Not as much traditional, which is fine as well. It's just, I grew up on traditional artwork.
Yeah, because the traditional artwork was serious. Because even the older traditional artwork, like even for some of the comics, they had the ones where you had the pens and you dip it in the ink and go over dip it in the ink. And I kind of miss that because I remember like I'm a fan of Ninja Turtles, but even more so I like Usagi Yojimbo.
Nice.
And they had a really short, beautiful series of like space Usagi, and I loved it. But the backgrounds, what they did, they had a black paper, and they just put a bunch of like whiteout dots to create space or explosions. And I just like the hand gestures. But yeah, like you're saying, it's a new age, huh? It's like, oh,
Absolutely.
it's
And
crazy.
yeah, and that's fine, it's cool, but I don't see a lot of artists in future generations doing like full pages like they used to do, like Jack Kirby and all them. Greg
Mm,
Capullo, even, he was talking at MegaCon a few years back, and he was like, it's so much faster for me to do digital, but then when I retire in 20 years, I'm gonna have nothing to sell. And that's why he does everything
mm,
traditional still, giant pages. He keeps his Batman pages, and he's like, when I retire and can no longer make money, because in the comic industry, you don't really have a 401k when it comes down to it. A lot of it is by contract. He's like, I'll still
yeah,
have those original pages that I can sell for thousands of dollars. If I became a digital artist, I can sell prints, but that's not guaranteed.
yeah, that's true. Wow, man, the era of change of technology and how we age of information and all that. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
We're seeing it happen before our very eyes. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah,
You and I, we can
yeah.
remember the old days.
So I grew up in the 80s, 80 on the dot. I think I'm older than you. Were you like 80s also?
I'm
Mid?
34.
Oh, okay, okay. So yeah, you're close. So yeah, it's just like it's such a weird age, man, cuz I didn't even have a VCR able to record morning cartoons cuz I lived off of morning cartoons, right? So it's like you had to be there when the moment came and then record. If you want to take out commercials, you had to pause. It's back. Okay, unpause. And then sometimes me, because I'm stupid, I didn't hit the pause, I hit the play, and then didn't record the rest of the episode. I'm like, no! So I have all these half episodes sometimes on my old VHSs. I still have the VHS DVD combo because I can't give it up. But man, it is different. Oh, also you had to go up to the box and switch from A to B to get even more channels to
Yeah.
double it. Because these days,
Do you
I didn't
remember
have
when they
to.
started? Do you remember when they
Oh.
started doing the timing on the recordings where you can say, okay, start recording at 7 p.m., but then the program would always be off by like 5 minutes, and you'd get the
Right?
last 5 minutes of the show that was just on, and then you missed the
Mm-hmm.
last 5 minutes of that show that you actually wanted to watch. These were
Mm-hmm.
the problems we grew up with.
Yeah. So I had to get the tapes ready. I always did the long play. Now, all you young kids out there, we had these VHS tapes, and then if you set record for extended play, it's not EP like an album. It would take a 2 hour recording to a 6 hour recording. But in the 80s, I think it was 4 hours, but I forgot. But yeah, I would plan like 10 minutes before the show started and 10 minutes after to make sure I didn't miss a thing.
There you go.
And
See, that's what we have to do after that. Yeah.
yeah, but what's worse is if there was a power outage, it would reset the VCR, and then you're screwed. It's like, oh man, those are the days. What were the first things you got into, like as a geek slash nerd?
The very first was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the live action and the cartoon. I couldn't tell you which one was first. And
Mm,
then the 89 Batman and the Batman the Animated Series. Those were all around that same time. But my mom, when she remembers, like when I was a kid and she would take me to Toys R Us, it was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Batman. Especially back then, like they would make the same molding for Batman and they would just change the colors of the suit and they'd be like, oh, that's
yeah,
House Batman. That's
yo,
Volcano Batman.
I think I remember Volcano Batman. His suit really looked like Tim Drake Robin. It's
Yeah,
like
pretty much.
I had I had my first Batman action figure from the movies was from the first movies. I had like it was a Michael Keaton, like it tried to look like him, but
Yeah.
you would put this plastic armor of Batman on, and he actually looked like armored Batman because it's so thick.
Yes.
That was
And
my first Batman figure of the movies. I like that one. Before that, it was uh they made action figures for Super Friends, and they had the whole Justice League. and it was gray suit Batman with the blue. And then if you squeezed his legs, he did rock'em sock'em kind of thing. Those are the best, dude. Because I think Robin, he squeezed his legs, he just did one karate chop,
Nice.
and Superman did the rock'em sock'em also. Wonder Woman always did this.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she was cool, but what's funny is like it would hit her head, like like if you look on the side, she's just like boom, boom. It's like, oh man. But at the time, it was funny because I had the Avenger ones too, so I mixed them all together. Captain America dated Wonder Woman in my little world. But yeah,
Yeah,
those
crossovers
stories are
before
great.
crossovers.
I know, right? We did crossovers as kids. It was easy.
Yeah, we did.
But yeah, I had the Arctic Batman where he had a white suit, and then where the black was, where the gray was, it was just white, and it was like black everywhere else. So I like that suit because then that suit for some reason got me interested in like Superman with a white suit, like when they had Absolute Justice Superman in
Yeah.
Justice League Unlimited, or no, that was before Unlimited. But anyways, I just like that, Kingdom Come future sleek look of Superman. But anyways, after that, what got you into comics?
So around that same period, my downstairs neighbor, he had they weren't long boxes at the time, but he had a pile of Jim Lee era X-Men comic books. So these were 90s comics. There were, Rogue was there, Wolverine was huge at the time, still is, but back then he was really, really popular among everyone. The X-Men, I think, were probably the most popular Marvel characters, maybe even more so than Spider-Man at that time, honestly. But when he had comic books, and I thought they were the coolest, he would show them to me, and we wouldn't read them, but we would just look at them, look at all the covers and look at the artwork. And it wasn't until years later, I want to say maybe 6 years, I would ask for Christmas for comic books from Santa Claus, and I wouldn't get them. And then 6 years later, finally, like there was, now I know what they are. They're grab bags where they put in a bunch of comic books for a cheaper price. The comic shop just wants to move them, and then the person buying them gets a lot of comics for a cheaper price. And that was my first thing of comics. It was just an arrangement. There was some X-Men, Batman Black and White. There wasn't any Sonic. There were some weird indie ones that I'm like, oh, what? I've never seen this guy.
Yeah, dude, I got the same ones too.
Yeah,
that was like my first Batman comic, and then it's funny because it was like, whoa, what a rarity. Then I found out all the other kids had the same ones too. Because back then, Marvel had G.I. Joe, and man, those comics were the best. I was addicted to Marvel G.I. Joe. That was my Avengers, still is in a way.
Like, Snake Eyes, yeah,
I was a Storm Shadow fan too, and I like Snake Eyes. But my favorite, other than Duke was just the man. But my other G.I. Joe favorite was Dusty. I just really liked him because he seemed like the kindest, more straightforward, and he always treated everyone with respect. I was like, hey, that dude's cool. I like
there
Dusty.
You go.
Yeah. Oh man. So what got you into video games? What was your first?
So that was my mom, I believe, was the one who got a console in our house because her sibling, my aunt, I believe they had an NES, and that was the first one. My dad used to work at a restaurant/bar, and they had a Pac-Man arcade machine. And when I was little, when we would go visit him, he would play Pac-Man, and I would have my hand on the joystick, and he would kind of guide it. It was kind of like I was playing, sort of. But I remember Miss Pac-Man was I had clear memories of. He loved that game. He played it all the time. And then when we got the NES, we only had the one game, and it was the Mario Duck Hunt combo, the one cartridge.
Yeah, it had both of them. You had to switch top to bottom. I had that too with the blaster.
With the blaster, yeah. So played that for hours on end, and that game you couldn't save. So as far as you got, like that was it. And then you turn off the system, and then the next day you'd start over from the beginning. So I guess video games have always been a part of my childhood and my life. That eventually led to the Sega Genesis. I was a Genesis kid instead of a Super Nintendo. Sonic the Hedgehog, which you and I both love. Sonic 3 was my first game, but I had played Sonic 2 before. But Sonic 3 was the one that my parents bought me. And then Sonic and Knuckles, man, that game was amazing. And it just continued from there. It snowballed, especially in that Genesis era.
Yeah, man, because I had Atari first, and I played that all 80s life. And then I got the NES in like 90, 91. And then, no, it was 90, sorry. And then my cousins got Sega Genesis, and we lived with them at the time. And I was like, oh, we got right when it came out, because Sega Genesis, the first game that came along with it was Altered Beast. It wasn't until
Yeah.
Sonic got popular the game came with Sonic. So did you, when you got Sega Genesis, did you get the one with Sonic one with it?
When the Genesis came, I believe it didn't come with any games. I could be wrong because Echo
Oh,
the Dolphin was in my collection, and I don't remember asking for that one. So
oh,
it
maybe
might have
that's the
come
other
with
one
like,
that came with it, like a variant.
yeah. Plus, back then, these retailers like Sears used to sell video games. That's where we used to get it, the consoles and the video
Isn't that
games.
trip?
Sears of all places, yeah. And so maybe Sears did its own bundle, especially during the holidays. You get that holiday catalog
Mm.
and all that stuff. But no, it did not. From what I remember, it did not already come with Sonic, and instead, Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles. I asked for Christmas, and Santa delivered.
Yay, good old Santa, man.
Dude, I remember
Love that
Altered Beast
guy.
though. Now I know what the title of it. Years later, I finally learned. But my cousins had Altered Beast, and when he turns into the werewolf, that animation and the
Yeah,
bright colors scared the shit out of me as a kid
it
for
did.
some reaon. Yeah, like I would be
Did you
peeking
know it was
around, like,
coming?
no, like I just seen them play, and then I saw that happen. Like it turns into a werewolf. It scared me, man. And years later, I'm like, oh, okay. I saw the animation. I'm like, that's Altered Beast. Now I know the name of it, and it doesn't
Yeah.
scare. I'm like, why was I scared of that?
That's hilarious. Oh, I feel you that, man. Yeah, that's funny. But in a way, I was thinking about Altered Beast recently because one of my favorite DBZ movies is still Kame Takami Battle of the Gods. I don't know why I still love that one. Everyone's like, super cuz, but um, I was thinking about it because Goku, when he goes like Super Saiyan, he gets a little bit bigger, but
Mhm.
then when he gets in God mode, he's slimmer. And I was thinking, an Altered Beast, when you get that third power up or second one, you're all roided out like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the head is like super tiny. But then when you get into werewolf mode, you're slimmer. So I don't know. I was thinking of Goku and Altered Beast recently.
Yeah,
But
there's a little
yeah,
connection
man,
there.
I know, right? It's cool. But yo, Genesis was sick. I just fell in love with Sonic. I thought I liked how he had the power to go fast. Because
Yeah.
Mario could go fast, but you had to hold B. Sonic, you could just boom, you can just go. And I liked his abilities, and I liked the animation better. I liked that the sprites were bigger. Like
Mhm.
in Mario, it was a little bit smaller, but I like seeing Sonic's expressions, and because I had like Felix, cartoon wise, I like Felix the Cat more than Mickey Mouse back in the day. Felix the
Okay.
Cat was
Yeah.
kind of edgier and sharper and
Yes.
all that. So when I saw Sonic, he had that sharp kind of animated designs too. I was like, hey, who's this guy? So I've been the Sonic fan ever since, man. I love that guy.
That was a cool thing about Sonic is he was expressive, which not I know some video games sure it had that, but compared to
Yeah.
Mario, nothing. He was cool. He was edgy for that time. And I never saw any of the commercials that was like Sega Genesis does what Nintendo, and I didn't see any of that or comprehend it. So I
No.
didn't understand what
Yeah.
the console wars were, and I know they existed. But to me,
Mm.
he was just a cool character. Like I don't know what it was, landed at the right time with the right generation of kids. He had the cool shoes. The music was incredible.
Oh
Knuckles,
yeah.
another cool looking character with the long hair and red, and he's got the knuckles on his
Yeah, dude.
hands.
I think he and Tails were the first to have slightly different abilities in game because Knuckles
Right.
could glide, and climb like Wolverine did in the anime show. Oh man,
Yeah.
Knuckles is sick, dude. All right, we're probably gonna talk about Sonic for a minute, but did you have the Sonic and Knuckles connecting technology where you put in Sonic 2 and Knuckles could be in it?
I never owned Sonic 2, but I did put Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles together where Knuckles could go back into Sonic 3 and play those old levels. And
Oh,
then
it
that's
did
how you
like
could.
that too.
Yeah, yeah. And the other
Oh,
thing is it would unlock another like final boss that you couldn't fight in just Sonic and Knuckles or in just Sonic 3. So you can
I
get even
missed that.
further in like the story if you connect the two. And I could never
Whoa.
beat that last Eggman. He was like this big robot, and you have to hit the nose and open its. It was tough, man. As a kid, and they had save back then. They finally put save, but I remember I was down to life 0 because remember 0 meant you were on your last one, and
Yeah.
I was like, I don't have the nerves to like go back in. I didn't want to lose and start over from the beginning, so I never that cartridge somewhere is at my parents, still on that 0 life on the final boss because I'm like I'm gonna lose. I can't beat this guy.
Oh man. Man, that I feel that story. That story I had with Ninja Gaiden 2 for NES.
Those
Like I
are tough
always want to
games.
Yeah, I always want to beat it and you couldn't. Like I was bad. Like it's a miracle my NES is still working because if I had to go somewhere, the dinner with the family, it's like 2 hours. I would put it on pause and turn off the TV, so the thing is still running on pause, and then I get back and continue it. But Ninja Gaiden, I got to the final boss, and then okay, this is the screen, right? The final boss is like going in a infinity figure eight, and if he touches you, you're dead, and he doesn't stop, and he's throwing these little fireballs that also find wherever you are. I was like, you have to be ninja skills to do that, and I am no Ryu Hayabusa. Then I was like, screw this game. I'll watch some gameplay on YouTube.
You have to be the Ninja Gaiden. That's right.
Yeah, you have to, man. Do you remember how difficult these games were?
They had to be because they were shorter, and especially arcade games, they had to be difficult so that they'd eat up your quarters, and so that would make the game seem longer, because we had to keep playing the levels over and over again. Back then, it was about memorizing the game, memorizing the levels, the moves, and that's how you would beat these games. And now they're able to make longer games, and that's great and all. But yeah, man, I remember that.
Oh, the grind, man. I was this close to beating Batman the Arcade from the movie.
That's another tough one.
I ran out of tokens at the last one. It's like, no. Oh, man. Oh, it's funny. So, you've been a Sonic fan for life. You played all the games by now, huh?
Yeah, all of them except the new ones, because again, I'm a dad. I can't like Sonic Frontiers. I want to play that, but I don't know if I'll be able to. But yeah, they're great. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, because I didn't have a Dreamcast, so I had to get the Battle version on the GameCube. That was amazing. Yeah? All the chows and everything. Yeah, that was incredible. Yeah, but when the Dreamcast came out, because I was helping my dad on he used to also have a paper route at night, and aside from his regular job, just to make extra income. And they had the Dreamcast newspaper, and I thought that was the coolest. But I forgot what console I had just gotten for Christmas, and it's like, okay, you already have a console. We just got you one, so Dreamcast gone. I had to skip on that one. But yeah, I kept up with Sonic whenever it re-released on the GameCube. It re-released on the Wii. They released some games there, and then they have the collection. So all of like the weird, obscure Saturn games, all that stuff, I was able to catch up on.
Nice. Dude, Sega Saturn was great. That's the one that had Battle Arena Toshinden, right?
I don't remember. I didn't have a Saturn. Did you have one? You had a Saturn?
No. My cousins had one for a bit too, and I think that's cool. How I first played. Was Resident? Oh, I forgot. No, Resident Evil Code Veronica. That was later. Okay, I don't know if that was on Saturn, Sega Saturn.
Code Veronica was on Dreamcast. I remember.
Okay,
that.
Okay, no, I had Dreamcast. I didn't have Sega Saturn then.
And then Nights into Dreams was Saturn.
Oh yeah, Nights. Dang. So, what are your like favorite? You don't have to rank them or anything, but really favorite Sonic games.
Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, I have a lot of memories of. Beat it as all the different characters. Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles still. Those are incredible. Go back and revisit those. Sonic 1, like it was the first one. So to me, it's not one that I revisit just because you couldn't do the spin dash. You couldn't hold it. You know what I mean? Like charge it. Yeah. You had to always run and then hit down to be able to spin dash.
So there's a gem in Game Boy Advance. There's an anniversary Game Boy Advance Sonic where it's Sonic 1, like for the first time on handheld Game Boy, but they added the down dash. It's the only game that has it. I have never seen anyone, bring that up ever. It's only on that GameCube. So, I mean, that Game Boy. So I keep my Nintendo DS because the Nintendo DS is the last DS that was backwards compatible to all the old ones. So I keep that just for that. But my friend, it does exist. So if you get your hands on the anniversary Sonic for Game Boy, it does have the downspin.
Awesome. So the purists don't like it, but everyone else is like, look, it's an improvement.
I know, right? I love downspin. I feel like that's his like power.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the Advance because Sonic Advance 1, 2, 3, those were so good. I wish they would
that was a good trilogy.
They were good. Sonic Rumble, I even played. Like my brother bought it, and I played it as well. And it's kind of like this weird 3D fighting game. But it's like you're looking at the camera from up at an angle. I don't know if you've seen that one.
It's kind of awkward angle. It kind of reminds me of like Star Wars battles or fighters. They had like a Star Wars beat 'em up game too. It kind of reminded me of that. But oh dang. Yeah, because also the Sonic Advance, I remember that seeing Sonic animated differently. Like he was taller, like his legs were longer, like the one we know now.
Yes.
And I really like that design.
Yeah, after Dreamcast, they really made him like lankier, longer legs, longer arms, longer hair, and not as round. So he kind of had that more updated design that I think they've pretty much stuck with the whole time. That's what we have now.
Yeah, even in the movies. But yeah, what other Sonic games are cream of the crop? Cream of the crop.
So Sonic Adventure, I never played, even though they did release it on the GameCube. I played the demo, but I'm like, Sonic Adventure 2 is way better. Like it's an improvement over, and they released Sonic Adventure 2 before the game on the GameCube before the first one. So those were on there. Sonic Colors was good, and I know they just released the collection or the remastered, but I heard that had some issues, so I ended up skipping on that one. Yeah, there were some problems, there were some glitches, and I don't know if they've patched them since, but it was kind of
Wait,
like,
when did they release this one?
This one came out a year or two ago, the re-release of Sonic Colors, the remaster.
Okay. Trying to remember which one I have now digitally, but I have a hard copy somewhere. It came out on Wii, I think, also, right?
Sonic Colors was a Wii one, yeah.
Yeah. I think I have the Wii somewhere. But what else?
Yeah, and then there was also the Sonic Heroes where you play as 3. You remember that one? The 3 teams, the Chaotix.
No, I missed that one.
Oh, that one was good. It was on the
GameCube. Was good?
Yeah, it was cool because you play different teams. So if you pick Team Sonic, it's Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, and they're all running as a triangle basically. But then you can switch them, and it'll be like someone else taking the lead, and they'll each have different powers or different abilities. And I remember playing it and wanting it because the Chaotix were in there, and they hadn't been in a game since Knuckles Chaotix, from what I remember. Like they had made little cameos, but Knuckles Chaotix was. So I was like, that's amazing that they brought these old characters back for this game, and that one was cool. I like that one a lot.
Dude, I gotta try that. I missed out on that one. That sounds amazing. That sounds like the team dynamic that they have for Team Sonic Racing.
Yeah, a little bit like that. Yeah, Sonic Racing, I like that one too, but it didn't have my attention quite as much as like the other Sonic games or Mario Kart. It's a cool game. It's a lot of fun. I used to, when I worked at GameStop, I used to sell that like crazy to kids. They loved Sonic Racing, and it would be a good one for people that are like, honestly, my boss and I, we would recommend it over Mario Kart because it was cheaper and we had a lot of copies. So a lot of kids are like, oh, I want Mario Kart. And they're like, no, that's $50. Mario games never go down in price, right?
Yeah,
so you're like, oh, Sonic Racing is $20. It's on sale. And the parents were like, is that like Mario Kart? And we're like, it's better. It's better than Mario Kart. And they're like, okay, you can get Sonic Racing. So they would get them that for $20. Kid would be like, all right, I got a game. And off they go.
No, that's cool. I love both. Like Mario Kart, this is just a household name. I mean, since Mario 64, I fell in love with it. I didn't have the NES, so I didn't play Mario Kart there. But that 64 game, that was the party. You got the 4 controllers, everyone hanging out.
Yeah.
We actually played Battle more than the racing. And then we
Battle
really
was
fun. We went like GoldenEye competitive with that stuff, man. That was insane. Like we would have cheat modes or cheap tactics, depending how you look at it, or smart, where you get the spinning shells, you hang around the corner of it, someone goes around, then you go get them. Oh, it's fun. And you're like, I lost a balloon. That stuff was great. Oh man. So did you play Sonic Racing Transformed?
Is that that's not Sonic R, is it the one where it's actually the characters running? Transformers the one where the vehicles change into planes and okay. Yeah, I played some of that. Yeah.
That game was amazing, and I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was after that Mario Kart started doing the same thing with the flying and the boats in the water, right?
I think you're right. It was like very close between the two racers, and I don't know if one just made it out before the other, but yeah, that was a huge deal. And I know Diddy Kong Racing kind of did it first because you could choose the plane or you can choose the submarine.
Oh, yeah, that's right, huh?
That one did it right before all of them, but you're right around the same time, both Mario Kart and Sonic did the switching. Because in Sonic, like you were mentioning, you're a car, but then as soon as you go over a part where you need to fly, it would transform into the plane, you'd go through and then land again. And then Mario started doing that too.
Yeah, I loved it because those stages, I don't know. I wasn't impressed with Sonic Racing 1, but Sonic Racing Transformed, I don't know, that sold me. I was playing that.
It was better. Yeah.
It was so good. And even the power-ups were great too. Like they had homing rockets and everything. And I love the drifting too. It
Yes.
felt good like a drifting game. And so when Team Sonic Racing came out, I was a little disappointed because I really liked the transform feature, but it was all Sonic people. It wasn't just Sega, because I think the other two had Sega characters mixed in.
Yeah, I think
Because
you're
you had
right.
like Skies of Arcadia and other stuff.
Mhm.
So I liked all Sonic, world, because I'm a Sonic stan, and I did like that it kept strictly just the cars, but some of the stages from Sonic Racing Transformed did carry over. So I was like, ooh, that's nice.
Did
Oh
you play
man,
that Sonic Mania that came out? It was like a
hell
revisit of
yeah,
2D.
yes, I love that one. I still have it on this thing. Oh, that one's great too.
People were
Um,
crediting, I don't know if it was the developer or one of the filmmakers. I think it was a developer, but he said that because Sonic Mania did so well at that time, that got the attention of Paramount and Sega to, okay, why don't we try doing a movie since the popularity spiked? So a lot of people are saying that if it weren't for Sonic Mania, we wouldn't have gotten the Sonic movie.
wow. So what in Sonic Media? I mean media. What in Sonic Mania made them go with the ugly furry one at first?
Well, just I
That's
guess
the
just the fact
question.
that it was so popular, right? But where do you stand on that? I want to hear your, because my opinion is unpopular on that one, and it's because of the Snyder movies. But how do you feel about the fact that they changed the original vision, as good or bad as it was, of that
hmm
old design to they replaced it with it, and they replaced it with a new artist who went in, redesigned Sonic, and they redid the movie with a different design.
I'm happy with the new design. The first one unsold me. Like I was like, I'll skip this movie. I'm really harsh with movies too. So if I'm not sold on the trailer or anything, I will wait for spoilers or if it being replayed on TNT before wrestling, uh, or TBS, AEW baby. But uh, yeah, I was unsold with it. But the look that they changed it to, I liked. But after seeing the movie, I was thinking, okay, well, the story was good. I like the story for Sonic, and because live adaptations are hit and miss. I
Yeah.
remember, I remember Mario Brothers with John Leguizamo. So it's
I
like
liked that movie as a kid. I don't
I
know,
still
like
like it though, but it's
that
just
that's all
it's
we
just
had.
weird. Yeah, it's all we had, man. And then the cartoon series came out where every Friday
Yeah.
was Link, and then everything else was Mario. So I was like, all right, this is cool. I can move on because the guys hosting it looked like Mario and Luigi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The live actors. I mean, if they just did that, it'd be good. But it's like, hey, this is all we got, so I'm gonna mess with it. That's kind of like us Masters of the Universe fans. We kind of force stand ourselves to go Dolph Lundgren. Yeah, that's our He-Man. Yeah, so I know the feeling.
Yeah, of course.
Skeletor. But yeah, yes. But looking back, I'm like, well, if they didn't change it, the story would still be there and still be good.
Mhm.
You know. So a part of me does honestly feel guilty of enjoying the change, but I like seeing Sonic from that form we were just talking about, longer legs and more expressive, and I like where it is now, but I do feel bad that I didn't give the other one a chance. But at the same time, it was gross. So it's
It
it's a mixed bag, but
it
uh,
I
I want to
remember
hear your thing.
when that first trailer came out, and you can go back and hear the podcast where I was like, "It looks fine." Like, I don't know why people are freaking out. Like, that's what a live action Sonic would look like. What's the big
hmm
deal? I'm gonna watch it. I'm a Sonic fan. And then the backlash, the memes, all that stuff came out, and
See, I
then they
didn't support that though.
yeah, I was like, all right, and then the new redesign came, and everyone's like, oh, this is way better. Now I'm gonna see it, and that's when I got pissed. I was like, oh, fuck you guys. Like, what about the artist's original vision? Like, this isn't cool. Like, they WB'd this thing. They Warner
Yeah,
Brothers did. They butchered it. So that I
there's a
wouldn't
lot of
watch it.
merit to that.
Yeah. So when I was like, I'll watch the second one. I'm not gonna see the first one. The first one is tainted. Can I get an original cut of
Mm.
the original? Why not? To the point where in that Chip and Dale movie, that old Sonic is called Ugly Sonic, and he's at the convention, and he's like a wash up. He's
Oh
not.
damn!
He's like all ugly now, and
I didn't see that
like he'd
movie.
been
That's messed
drinking or
up, bro.
smoking, and I'm like, man, if imagine if you were that artist, like deserved or not, but you're that artist now. It's a joke and another fucking movie. Like that sucks, man. I feel for him.
Oh, you know what? Uh, I didn't get no. See, I could hear that and not get offended because that's a very valid point. Because as you're describing, I was thinking of the poor guy. How did he spend like 8 months designing the Sonic, and then
Yeah.
all this happens? I mean, yeah, it is kind of harsh because I even felt this is the guilty part because I felt like they kind of caved into like a mob mentality almost.
Hmm.
And I hear some people think of that with the snarko movement too, but uh
Yes, and that was brought up a
there's a
lot.
difference a bit,
Yes,
I
that's
think.
the difference. Is one is it'd be like the Sonic fans asking, "No, I want the old design back." That's what
Mhm.
the Snyder Cut fans are doing. They want
Exactly.
the original vision.
Hmm.
And that's why some people kept bringing that up to me. It's like, well, Daniel, this isn't this. It's like they're not the same thing though, because one's the original vision and one's demanding a change. It'd be like us demanding that they change it to Justice League, which critics were demanding for after
Yeah.
BVS, right? We want a happier
Yeah.
Superman. We want a lighter movie. So they got it. They got their Justice League. They got their change. But that's kind of what the comparison I made with them.
That's a good comparison too, because my sister loves the new Sonic movie, and she's like, thank God they changed it too. And we've had this
Mhm.
conversation too, because we're like, okay, so um, we have two situations where one changed for a group of people and it's bad, and one changed for a group of people and it's good. But you know, and it's just kind of interesting. I guess it's like the intent behind it and the situations that really differ 'em, like you were saying. But I respect that, good sir, about you supporting Sonic 2 and not Sonic 1 in that regards, because I'm the same way with Power Rangers, because I feel Power Rangers is uh like a altered version of the original Super Sentai.
That's
So
true. Yeah.
uh it's like that same theme. That's why I went to Super Sentai. I was like, where's the original, the full unscripted? And I found out that there's a lot that they take out of it.
Yeah.
It's really crazy.
Yeah, I've never
So
seen the
that's
original,
really
but my friend was just telling me about that. Scott, another co-host on the show, and he was like, "You
mm,
can find all the episodes for free on here. You can watch them." And I was like, "Okay, so where's the teenage kids?" And he's like, "No, that's not in there." And there was all kinds of crazy changes, and the lore
yeah,
is different, way different.
very different. Because in Super Sentai they all have a theme, and the theme of Zero Ranger, which is people know as Power Rangers, they're all from fantasy era where there's kings and castles and dinosaurs and fairies. So in
Yeah,
modern day, you see the fairies and elves are like disguised as like janitors and stuff, trying to maintain magic from taking over the world and the evil one. So I loved it because it was a bigger, deeper world building. But
yeah.
I'll say that for another podcast. We're talking about
No,
Sonic and Snyder Cut now.
no, I gotcha. And I want to give another quick shout out to Nick, who also told me that like the powers of the Super Sentai were like reincarnations, sort of, right?
Hmm.
And then the new generation, and there was like an old ranger, I guess, that came on and showed the new rangers how to do things or whatever they called them back then. So Nick's another one of our friends who knows a lot about that stuff.
Hmm. Your channel has so many great co-hosts, man. It's
Well,
like
thanks.
I'm telling y'all, you guys gotta subscribe, follow. You're gonna check out the links in the description below and just follow Reasons I'm Broke. It's a great show. Everything is fantastic. I love your mind and how you look at things, man. And and
It's
there's
all shaped
always
by
a
you guys
discussion.
too, man.
What?
It's all shaped by you guys too, man. Because you know,
What?
like I go on Twitter and I see, you know, different opinions, different. I've changed my mind on a few things here and there
Hmm.
based on, okay, now I can see it from that perspective. I see why that's a problem. And all of that is reflected on the show too. But what's nice about things like Twitter is after so many years on it, I've found people that look at things or look at DC or whatever the same way that I do. So it's like the thought of already of like, no, screw that production. And then I go on Twitter and it's like, yep, no, everyone thinks everyone's on the same page. Cool. Like, and we can all make fun of it or we can all make memes or whatever.
Yeah, I like the fun, but yeah, the exchange of ideas, because then I've learned to like appreciate more of what I like from how everyone else shares, what it means to them. And
Hmm.
I love that thing, and that's kind of like I want to do with this channel. That's what I get a lot from your channel too, because when you cover Dragon Ball Z, and because I'm always behind on Dragon Ball Z. That's like my life story. That's why I always stick to the OVAs and enjoy the movies, because it's like, all right, I got it
There you go.
in here. But I did read a lot, some of the mangas, and that was like, phew, you catch it faster with the mangas back in the day. So I really like hearing your like episodes when you have your in movie theater experience, especially with Pokemon, because I don't really watch Pokemon. I find out about Pokemon from your show, and it's really
Yeah,
cool.
that was right after your time, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm weird because I feel like I never left. If there's something cool, I'll stick with it. Like He-Man Masters of the Universe, the 2002 series on Cartoon Network.
Yeah, I think so.
It was Cartoon Network, which WBD scrapped.
Parts of it, but
Yeah, I was like,
like I was saying, as a shareholder, I'm like, good, cut the bleeding, man. Like we're in debt by the billions, man. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, because okay, how do you? I forgot what I was gonna say. Because where's this going? With this? How do you feel about Discovery? Because they're very like penny pincher. I noticed with
Sure.
how they're going about different things. Because even in pro wrestling, I'm waiting to see if they're going to air Ring of Honor, but it's another show series of pro wrestling, but it's also part of WBD and Warner Media and stuff. But it's been on hold for a while, and they say that they're still waiting on Zaslav to make a decision on Ring of Honor, but I think he's still trying to figure out the main shows. There's like a lot of changes going on. What do you think of that with all the cuts?
These are necessary changes. Like I was just talking to Kelly about this, and people are quick to blame Zaslav for the cuts. And I was telling her, like, I'm glad he's doing it. Like, you're ripping off a band-aid. Like, just do it quick. Do all the cuts you need to. Like, we're canceling that. We're firing these people. We're doing all this within a year. I don't think we're at a year yet of him having control of this. I think we're still at 200 days or whatever. Yeah, a little over half a year. And so it's like, keep doing the cuts, keep getting rid of this stuff. And in the meantime, don't blame Zaslav for cutting all this stuff. Blame the old people at that just got fired, like Emmerich, Toby, all of them, for wasting all this money, for greenlighting projects that they shouldn't have been greenlighting, shit that never should have been on the air or they should have been spent money on. Like, these were people that were spending money like they were in the green, and they weren't. So Zaslav is going, these should have never existed. This shit should have never gone out. Batgirl never should have gone into production. Get rid of that. He's doing the stuff that he's cleaning up is what he's doing. And that's what I need. You know, I, again, as a shareholder and as someone that's like, you know what, business 101, you need someone in there to be the bad guy if you want, but someone that's like, I don't care. It's going to save us millions of dollars 5 years down the line.
No, I could see that because, you know, as a fan of, because unfortunately, or fortunate or unfortunate, a lot of the stuff I like has come through Warner Brothers. Like I like Babylon 5, I like Enter the Dragon, you know, and DC Comics especially. So at a time I felt that there was a weird, boring oversaturation of a lot of different things across the board, you know. So if this is like you know, cleaning a hoarded house, or it's like they was kind of, the company has been spreading themselves too thin and living out of their means maybe. So
yeah,
when do you think everything, all the house cleaning will be done, and then we'll see the new company push forward?
I think 5 years down the line is what we're going to be
5 years
seeing.
down the line, really?
Yeah, because we still got, we don't know what he wants to produce yet for DC. Like, the latest thing, like as far as timeline, I think is Blue Beetle, right? Is like the last newest DC thing. Maybe Constantine too, right? I don't know. But those are the like latest things, and they haven't announced those yet as far as like what's after that and how many years down the line are those going to be before they actually come out. Probably 2024, 2025. So all of those have to come out, make money, and then maybe by then, hopefully in 5 years, they're in the green, they're starting to get profitable, but they're going to have to invest money. Right now they're cutting, stopping the bleeding, and then unfortunately they're going to have to invest a little bit of money on these new projects and hope they make a little bit of money so they can invest it into more. By the time he's looking to flip it in 10 years to Comcast or whatever that rumor was, by then he'll probably be like, look at what I did. You know, pay me.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of stuff on the conveyor belt too that was coming out while he moved into his position too.
Yeah, it's kind of like when a new president takes hold in any country, you're still going to see the
Yeah.
policies from the old one take place for a few years before like that person's policy then goes through. I kind of think of that too with Zaslav. It's like, how long is it going to take for them to stop these productions, for these ones to come out? We're seeing it with the DC universe. You know, Flash, all those are still products of the old regime. They still have to come out, and we don't even know what he wants to make and put out. So it's still going to be a while.
Wow. Yeah, it must be tricky. It's like a huge juggling situation. I'm like, I'm glad it's not me, you know? So
Yeah,
it's
I don't
like,
want that job.
no, that's crazy. So I wish him all the best and all that, man. But
Yeah.
as we were tipping into DC, let's talk about your boy Batman. Is that your boy for all
Sure.
comic books?
One more time, you were cutting out there.
Yeah, I saw a little. Is Batman your number one guy in all comic books or just DC?
Yeah, it's Batman. 100%
Hey,
Batman.
when
Yeah.
did you become a Batman fan, man?
Batman 89 and Batman the Animated Series. Those two right there were the ones that
Ooh,
solidified me. They had me as a kid. This is why I always say WB, all the companies, they need to have a cartoon out at all times because they need to catch every single generation so that, for example, assholes like me are now lifelong Batman fans because of that one cartoon that came out in 93, I want to say, 92. So that's the kind of stuff that makes
93, yeah.
your future fans for life. You know, how much money have I spent on DC projects or DC product comics just because of Batman? That's what you always need to catch them when they're little. And like my son, we watched Batman the Animated Series today. We watched Clayface Part 1 and 2, like Mudslide. We
Oh,
watched
that's a
that.
good one.
Yeah, we watched those, and he's asking me questions like, "Oh, why is Clayface?"
That's the origin of Clayface, right?
Yeah, the origin, and then also the
Mm.
one where the lady who's a fan of his is helping him because he's melting, he's losing his ability to retain himself. Like he's dying. And so
Mm-hmm.
he's trying to get that new ion or izone or whatever they call it, isotope from Wayne Industries to stay alive. And my son's asking me like, "Oh, well, why is he melting?" And it's like he's dying because he's a product of these chemicals, you know. And so I'm making him into a Batman fan
Hey,
from the
that's
get
awesome.
go.
Passing the torch.
Yeah, that's right. This is the stuff I liked, and if he didn't like it, cool, don't watch it. But oh, he likes it, great. Now I can watch something I love too.
Yeah, dude. Because man, I feel you on raising a kid. Because my niece, I helped raise her, and she's like, she's like my play daughter. And I was introducing her to Superman, and she was getting onto Supergirl, and she's like, "I love Supergirl." Da, da, da. Then recently, now she's a Miles Morales fan.
All right.
So Spider-Man is her thing. I was like, "Oh, okay, it is." So I just encourage it. She chose her path. I'm gonna
Yeah.
support her. But yeah, I was passing the torch. But now she's a Spidey, and it's cool because man, and I see what you're saying too because that animated series, uh it was so because obviously it's a cartoon, yeah, but there's an element of maturity to it that I
Mhm.
liked from the 80s. Because even though like GI Joe is hokey, the cartoon, they're all shooting laser guns, no one gets hit and everyone's safe, and somehow there's violence everywhere, and then there's a message at the end and no one dies. In the comics it's a different story, but even then the plot of like trying to stop robbery as with Cobra, and that the art, everything was still mature. So what I really liked about these comic books and characters is that, especially when they do animated, is that there's and it's like a Jackie Chan movie. It's easy to follow for kids and enjoy, but there's still elements that are mature. So as you grow older or grow with it, it doesn't kind of lose its luster, and there's something you can take from it. And I feel that there's not enough of that around.
That's one of the things that Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, when they were doing interviews years later about the show, they were like, we were airing on prime time. This wasn't a Saturday morning cartoon. This was a prime time show. People were watching it at night, over dinner, whatever. And they were treating it like we're doing a show, a cartoon for adults. We're not making this for kids specifically. And it wasn't until season 2 and 3 when Fox started saying, okay, you need to put more Robin in here because kids are watching the show and we want
Mm-hmm.
to make toys. And that's when Bruce Timm would be like, okay, fine. And then he would be like, and Robin gets hurt. And so he's gone out of the episode. So now it's Batman. So he would do stuff like that. And so that's the kind of mentality they had. And that's why I think you're right. It has been successful all these years. You can enjoy it as a kid, like my son does, And then as an adult, where I can be like, holy shit, Ra's al Ghul was right.
That's the hashtag, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy because Raish is a total Raish was interesting because he was like a eco world saver guy, but he had like this dogmatic thing, like he had like just causes, like, but he went about it very evil and it's just like, for a cartoon they actually went into the multi-layered of character psychology. It wasn't any cookie cutter, like the Adam West one. A lot of those villains were very, very similar. Like they would always say their plan and talk about it and then have some cackle. It's like on the dot every single time. And it's like everyone of them was a Joker of some sort.
Right.
But that animated series, you really got some personalities in each character, and that maturity, that level, I appreciate, I like. And that's just such good stuff, man. Do you have any favorite Batman episodes from that animated series?
I love the Ra's al Ghul episodes, the parts 1 and 2.
Yeah.
That's always my go-to. And my son, like, Leo doesn't like it. Like he's
Oh, he
like,
doesn't?
outrageous. He's like, all right, it's fine, but it doesn't have a colorful villain, not a villain that can transform like Clayface. Joker is his favorite because it's a colorful, funny character, and he likes him. But Raish is a guy with a cape, a green cape, and he goes into goo, and then he gets a little bit older or younger, right? So
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, he's fighting with swords or whatever. But he's like, all right, Dad likes it, so he'll play it on for me sometimes. Like, oh, we're gonna watch your favorite, Dad. I'm like, all right, cool. So that's my favorite. Heart of Ice with Mr. Freeze. That's another one that I didn't appreciate until I was older. As a kid, I'm like, okay, it's Mr. Freeze, but as an adult, it's like he's trying to save his wife who's frozen. Like, is it right for Batman to stop him? There's that question there. And they reinvented the character, and now that's the character forever. It's no longer
Dude,
the
I
Mr.
love his
Hero.
voice. Like,
Yeah.
no, I can't really do it, but
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
the echo because you really felt it was in his helmet the whole time.
right. And the voice
Oh,
director Andrea kept telling the actor, "You got to go flatter. You got to go even flatter." And he's like, "I can't go any more flatter." And she's like, "No, you have to go colder, flatter." And then finally, she got him down to what what you were doing, just a cold voice, flat voice to such a warm character. He's doing this out of love. He's doing this for his wife. He's very emotional in spite of all that hiding that he's doing. And you don't see any of that until you're an adult or a little bit older, right? And you don't get to
yeah,
understand
man.
it. So that's
Man.
another good one. Robin's Reckoning. I'm not a huge Robin fan or Dick Grayson fan, but I like the Robin's Reckoning episodes because it shows you the struggle that Robin went through, how he was saved by Batman, so he didn't have to go down the exact same path as Batman. Like, yes, his parents were lost, but Batman only had Alfred as a guidance. Robin has Alfred and Batman to help him not go quite as far into that deep end as Batman did. He can still have his life. He can still go to college. He can still have Barbara Gordon later on. And Batman struggles with that. He struggles with relationships. So those are three that right off the bat, like, those are some of my favorites. I don't know if you have some favorites of your end too.
Oh yeah, I do. Because I love martial arts, right? So, the animated series really taught me that Batman knew martial arts, and I didn't know that for the longest time. Because I saw the Adam West one, and as a kid, I didn't like Adam West. I liked the black and white Zorro show instead because I thought he was more baller and it was like the same thing. A lot of their caves were shot the same way. It was funny. So, but yeah, Adam West was like, oh, and he was always getting in trouble. But when I saw Night of the Ninja and then
Yep.
Day of the Samurai, those two back to back, oh, it was great because it was like it was the layer of martial arts storytelling, where martial arts storytelling is all about the style incorporated with the character's journey of what's going on. And those two were amazing. And then there's another tie. Okay, maybe two. There's another one. I don't know the name. I have the whole volume, so I just forget. Where Batman is trying to race around town to stop a bomb, but on the way he's running into all these problems in the neighborhood. And I really liked that one because it felt like he had a race against time, and at the same time he was aware of the inner city problems as they're happening. Because sometimes I look at the news and all this, and there's all these shootings and breakings, burglaries, and all this crazy stuff, and then it's cool to see Batman in that world instead of like these very comic book over the top fantasy villains and sci-fi elements. was kind of cool seeing that grounded. And then the other one tied with that is when he was undercover doing something, and then as like a homeless guy, but then he got abducted and he lost his memory, and then he was in some coal mine and
Yeah.
he didn't know who he was until he found out who he was, and he's like, oh shit, I'm the motherfucking Batman. And he broke out and came back as Batman. That was cool because even musically, they had a new theme where they had some harmonica in the background, like
Yes.
some bluegrass. So those are my top 4, I have to say, of the animated series. The last 2 are
Yeah.
tied for 3, but damn, those are so good.
I know which one
Oh,
you're talking about, the harmonica
right?
one, and that
Yeah,
was
he had
one
like
that,
a gray hair and stuff too.
yes, because he had put like powder on and
Yeah,
whatnot, and it all
that's some
stayed the
good
whole
powder.
time.
That stayed on the whole
Yeah,
time.
it did. And then Alfred had to drive the Batwing. He had to fly the
Yeah,
Batwing into it. He's like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing.
that's why
It's on
when I saw
autopilot.
BVS, when I saw Alfred do the Batwing,
Yes.
he's like, all right, switching to this. I was like, he's got it because that happened. He's got
Yeah, of
practice.
course. That's one
Oh,
episode when Leo gets to that. I would not be shocked if he. There's some like boring episodes like I've got Batman in my basement. That's the one where Batman's knocked out the whole episode and Penguin's
yeah, and the
coming after the
kids,
kids. Yeah,
they don't remove his mask. I remember, right?
no, they don't. They keep it
respected
on. So that episode was on, and then it was followed by the one with Nostradamus, like that guy that can predict the future. And those are 2 episodes that are like not the greatest. He watched those back to back and he's like, I'm done watching for today. Like he turned off TV. If he gets to that one that you're talking about with the harmonica, I can expect him to be like, yeah, there's not a lot of Batman in this one. There's no cool villain.
I know. Oh man. Yeah, there wasn't any. It was just its own thing, huh?
Yeah, it was just like the big guy that was like
That
eating the
guy with
turkey
that
and the
hat,
chicken.
and he was always
Yeah.
sweating and crap.
Yeah.
Oh man. That's some good times. I do see we're getting close to the end. So, or because we have a time maximum. So I want to say, so with all this stuff we've all grown up with, because we're close in generation, and what got you into Zack Snyder's universe of films to love it and fight for Snyder Cut so much?
I mean, it all started. I watched 300. I worked at the movie theater when 300 came out. I used to work at AMC, and we would quote it, right? Like, this is Sparta. It was an awesome movie. But I didn't equate that. I didn't know like that is Zack Snyder's film. It wasn't like
Same
I was
here.
following directors quite as much as I do today. And that didn't start happening until I watched Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain, and that's when I was like, oh, I should follow this
Ooh.
guy. I should watch more of his movies. I should watch more directors' movies of guys that movies that I like. And so back then I wasn't doing that with movies like 300, but I saw Man of Steel. BVS like really put a fire in me of like, this universe is awesome, right? This is really cool. And then going back and seeing Man of Steel and kind of seeing some of the connections between the two, getting in touch on Twitter. I would say Twitter is a huge proponent of that because, a lot of you guys were sharing screenshots or videos of different connections, different things that Zach was putting in these movies. Because I initially watched BVS and Man of Steel, and we had just come off the Dark Knight trilogy, right? The Nolan films. And I was like, oh, okay, these movies for some reason, and I wasn't catching them at the time. I'm like, they don't have that level of depth that the Nolan movies did. They're great, but Nolan's like doing something like there's all this symbolism and all this stuff, but it wasn't.
There's a lot of conceptual storytelling there.
Exactly. And that's what I was catching, but I wasn't catching what Zach was doing. I was expecting something similar because it was the same producer, Nolan, but it wasn't until, people started finding the connections on Twitter, like, holy shit, he did this in this movie that pays off in BVS. Things like that I was like, oh shit, he did a lot. There's a lot in here. And go back, seeing the movies, appreciating them on another level. Then the Ultimate Edition comes out. That's another treat, right? Because now you're getting extra footage, like 30 minutes or so. And then I guess seeing the injustice done in the Steppenwolf post-credit scene not post-credit scene, but the bonus scene that he released on YouTube. I think he called it the baptism. Seeing that now of like, maybe that was cut because they did not want that Steppenwolf in Justice League, and he released it to try to get people to like rally, like, oh, who is that? Let's get Steppenwolf. And we weren't as organized as we are now. If we were, maybe, we wouldn't have seen that weird Steppenwolf that we saw in Justice League. But, things like that, starting to see the injustice happening, like that really connected to me for some reason on a really personal level to these movies. And maybe a lot of it too was the fact that I'm like, I liked BVS, I like Man of Steel, and I worked at a comic shop. Everyone around me, everyone I worked with, all the customers did not like those movies. Like they would make fun of me for
Really?
liking those movies. They'd always put it down. They talk about the MCU because back then it was like a competition between
Yeah,
Marvel and DC and
because
the movies. Like they
Civil War
saw
was about to come out.
the BVS and all those as a threat for some reason
Mm.
to the MCU, and like they couldn't coexist or whatever. So I was constantly made fun of by my coworkers. A new trailer would come out, they'd trash it, and I'd be defending it constantly on all fronts, and it was tiring, and that got me jaded early on, right? And then I
Yo, I
saw
had the same
online,
ones in comic stores, and a lot of my homies here, unfortunately, are a lot of Marvel guys. So
yeah,
I feel the pain.
yeah, and so when I started getting connected to people online, like, okay, these guys like the movies, they enjoy them, and they kind of see the same struggle that I've sort of gone through as far as like, I can't even share. No, I didn't watch the new Avengers movie. Why? Why not? Suddenly it's a big deal. Why didn't you see it? What's wrong with you? It's just not my thing. I don't like the MCU. What do you mean you don't like the MCU? Like, I couldn't just leave it alone, right? I couldn't just, no, I just don't like them. Oh, okay, cool. Like, it was always a big thing. So
Uh,
that all snowballed, man, or it got me closer and closer to like valuing what Snyder was doing in these movies, because I saw that I was constantly protecting them, defending them, and that for some reason I guess got me attached on a personal level to them. Like, I guess I don't want to say my identity is attached to them, but there's a bit of me in those movies, right? Because of
mhm.
the years of that constantly. So to the point where now, thankfully, we can all organize, we can all try to set a narrative, and it comes and goes, right? You know how it is right now. We're in a little bit of a low, but we can we can fight the narrative a lot better than we could back then. You know, but
Mm.
if we had the organization today that we had back then, you know, screw reviewers, screw Rotten Tomatoes. What the fuck do they know? Go watch the movie, that kind of thing.
Yo, I got angry with I'm not into Rotten Tomatoes because it started when I read their review of Shawshank Redemption. I was like, whoa, these guys are on. They think there's something else. That's too much. I can't.
Hmm.
Ever since then, like if I get a movie and it has the sticker of Rotten Tomatoes, I like that because I could take it off. But
Right.
sometimes it's imprinted on the thing. So I got into this like DVD Blu-ray art where I have a black Sharpie, and then I get rid of it, and then to
Nice.
even it out, I do the same thing on the other side of the DVD cover. So if you ever see my collection, there's some that are all scratched out. You don't
Oh,
see
I gotta
any
see
Rotten
one. You
Tomatoes.
gotta post one on Twitter one day.
You know what? That's a good idea. I gotta try that sometime.
Yeah, and then
Oh
link the
man.
video so that way people are like, "Oh, what's that about?" And then they can come back and go to your channel.
You know, I actually might have a video of it on my Instagram or YouTube. I have to look. But I
Awesome.
think I did that. Like, this is what I do. Man. But yo, well, isn't I really like what Zack Snyder did with Batman and
Mhm.
Superman, these characters. Because I feel like he's the live action storyteller director that Bruce Timm was doing with animation, because I really feel like there's a similarity with Bruce Timm's work of the DC universe and Zack Snyder's work of DC universe, where they take some liberties
Right.
of some changes, but um, it's only to I always took it that they took some liberties just to define their world, their timeline. You
Yes.
know, they're not retelling anything. Like, when you see like Lois is a redhead, I was like, this is clearly a different universe. So I just love this universe so much, and I hope we see more of it.
I'm glad you
It's
brought up Bruce Timm, because that was
mm,
one thing that you're absolutely right. Like recently, The Killing Joke was a problem for a lot of people when the movie came out, because they saw that the Bruce and Barbara relationship, they were like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." And I'm like, "Did you guys not watch Batman the animated series? Did you not see Batman Beyond? Bruce Timm worked on those, and it wasn't a problem back then. No one cared." I
mm-hmm.
was like, me, I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course." Batman hooks up with everyone in the DC universe. You know, he's like, it's like Wolverine on Marvel's side, right? Or Spider
or
Man on
or
the Marvel
Tony
side.
Stark, because
Yeah,
he
yeah.
got with She-Hulk and all that.
Yeah, so and with Batman, it's like that's his reputation. You saw it in the animated series. Talia, he had the Mask of the Phantasm, Barbara Gordon, the date of the week, whoever it was in that
Mm-hmm.
episode. So even Harley Quinn wanted a little action in one of the episodes. So it's kind of funny that he now gets criticized for that, kind of in the similar way that Zach now gets criticized for what he tried to do. And it's like at the core, it's still the same character, but there are some changes, like you were saying. There's some changes taken to the character, molding them out a little bit, carving their own path onto this character and seeing, and it works. It's not just a change because, but it works, especially if you've seen things like Batman the Animated Series or you've seen things like Man of Steel. You kind of see the world that was established, and that's appreciated because we just came off of that, and I say just, but really it is relatively new, that Superman Returns movie that was playing it safe. They wanted to do something that would please the Reeves Superman fans.
Yeah, because
And
it was
audiences
considered
didn't,
Superman 5.
right. Yeah, and here's your hopeful Superman. He's smiling, blah, blah, blah. That's what we would say these days. And
Yeah.
audiences didn't like it. They thought it was boring. Make something. Why is Superman so boring? So then they hire Zach, who does something incredible with the character, something different. Here's a ton of action. And here he is still saving people, still doing the right thing, being brought up by the Kents who are teaching him how to do the right thing. Then you're seeing Zod, who could have been the opposite of Clark in many ways, trying to save his people, right? You can kind of see why Zod is almost a good guy in a way for trying to preserve his people. So there's just a lot in there that elevated the character, I think, at least for me. You know, I like Superman from the animated series, Justice League, all that stuff, but on the big screen, this is a whole nother level. And that's Superman right there.
Oh, hell yeah. I feel that because I fell in love with Superman later on. I was a Batman only and Marvel only guy for like all the 90s. But it wasn't until college a good friend of mine suggested, he heard my little Superman criticism. He was like, "Ooh, that's harsh. Have you read some of his comments?" I was like, "Yeah, not really." So he suggested some, and I read them, and I started falling in love with the character in a same type of Batman way. And I really see Superman and Batman are like the yin yang of each other. They both have a similar rogues gallery, even though it's vastly different. Superman's is very sci-fi driven, and Batman is very like street, criminal, but they both have a fantasy element of it too. So, and this is going back to Bruce Timm, his Superman animated series. That was like my playbook of Superman. When I got into it, I was like, wow, I'm reliving how the Batman animated series did for me, because I snoozed on Superman for a long time. All that Justice League I didn't see. So when I was rewatching, because I just bought the DVDs and I watched them, I was like, whoa, I like Superman. So I bought the next one. And then when I was done with that, I was reading some of the comics. And then Superman Doomsday, the animated movie that Bruce Timm did, he actually directed the first half. And then the other two halves are directed by other directors. But I could see that it's a movie, but there's elements of his Superman in there. Like I saw Superman Doomsday as that, if that was the Superman series finale that we should have got.
Gotcha.
His volume 3 didn't end well. I mean, it ended where the world was doubting Superman and it was over. And I was like, what? But then Justice League happened. I was like, okay, this is a redeeming thing. But I looked at the Doomsday thing for just the Superman story as a continuation. So now that you bring up the Killing Joke, I feel, because I was a little bit bothered a bit, but I was like, whatever. It's no big deal. But now I appreciate it more because now you're reminding me that this is Bruce Timm retelling his story, but it's also continuing the characters and worlds that he built. And then it makes a lot more sense, man. So now I like the Killing Joke a lot more. See, there we go. There's sharing thoughts.
That's awesome. And it's like even I said it back then, and if you didn't like that first half that he added, just watch from that middle part where it's just the graphic novel adaptation, and it's a perfectly fine adaptation. And you can ignore, I guess, if you want the relationship building that is put in the movie. Like it's still a solid telling, even if you just do the half.
Yeah, but even if you don't like it or whatever, there's an appreciation of it because it's also the reunion of like Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy working together, and that's very special because those guys made those characters' voices so iconic. I've heard voice actors like Mark Hamill. I thought it was Mark Hamill, but no, they're just emulating the Joker he created. So it's not just Batman Kevin Conroy did, it's Mark Hamill's Joker that's so iconic. So it's really cool to see them in that closer to the graphic novel, but still the animated series. It's a special movie. How do you like the difference of the ending though? It's still fine, or?
That I have a big problem with that. Yeah, I know.
I had to feel it.
Yeah, because if you get the special edition, I have it somewhere here, but the hardcover comic, they talk about that in the prologue or whatever. Of they're like, oh, a lot of people were confused about the ending, and we don't understand why. And to me, I read the graphic novel years before the movie came out, and I never read it as like Batman is killing the Joker at the end. I never got that impression. I got the impression of the joke is about two insane guys. Like, no, you're going to turn off the flashlight if I try to walk across it. Batman laughs because though they are the insane guys. They're two crazy guys themselves. They are those guys in the jokes, and that's why Batman laughs. They're in this together in a way. That's a perfect ending. You know, it just doesn't make sense that he would then reach out and kill him. Like, there's no build up. There's no sign of that ever happening. I feel like they would have told that story. We would have known that was coming up, and it never did. In the movie, they made it clear that Batman shuts him up, you know, because you still hear, and I know people bring up the panel, but that's just not the way I read it when I read the comic. And for some reason, they interpreted it in a certain way in the movie, and now the movie people think that Batman shut up the Joker and choked them. Even if you read the comic, when you see the panel, Batman's hands aren't even. People are like, he has his hands around his neck. He doesn't. He's resting him on his shoulders because they're both laughing. Like you put your hand on someone as you're laughing. Exactly.
That's
like
a little
that.
far
Like,
from my neck, bro.
He's leaning on him. So it's just, and it doesn't help that Alan, who was it? Yeah, I think it was Morrison that went on a podcast and he was like, no, Batman kills him. That's how I read it. And people are like, Morrison just said that Batman kills in the Killing Joke. I'm like, so what? He didn't work on it. he's not a guy that was on the book. Who gives a shit?
A fair interpretation that we all can make.
Yeah. It's just another person doing an interpretation, just like you and I. It'd be like you and I having we think it's this. Okay, so what?
Oh man, I want to encourage everyone to value your own opinions. You don't need validation from anyone else. So say what you think, and let's see where we go from there. But yeah, I do remember the time constraint, so I want to thank you so much for being on this episode, bro. It's good talking to you, and thanks for working with me. I'm sorry again, but any last things you want to say of what's coming up, like what you're doing with your channel or other stuff? Because you're here on YouTube also. I'll let you.
Here on YouTube. Yeah, weekly podcast. If you want it on the go, I'm on every podcatcher. If you just go on thereasonsimbroke.com, and you will find the link on everywhere you can find us. But whatever you listen to podcasts on, just search Reasons I'm Broke, and you will find us on there. We release a weekly episode every single Sunday at noon Eastern time. We've been doing that for the last over 10 years now. And we were nominated this year for the podcast awards. And that's a huge thanks to the Brokettes out there. So hopefully you tune in and find something in the episode that you enjoy. If you're a pro Snyder fan, this is definitely the podcast for you. We talk David Zaslav of Warner Brothers almost every week. And but if you're definitely into that, the animated series, into a lot of the same stuff that Kojay talks about on Twitter and on his channel, a lot of that stuff you and I are into. So if you enjoy Kojay's channel, you will probably enjoy the podcast. And if you're listening to this from the podcast, because I'm going to tag this, I'm going to share this on Twitter, make sure to subscribe to Kojay's channel, because once again, if you like the podcast, you're going to like Kojay's show. So tune in for that. You've got the wrestling, you've got Snyder Cut Fighters coming up. You've been hyping that up, and you do that every now and again. You do a live stream of it. So please also let them know what's coming up on Snyder Cut Fighters, because you've got people in the movement as fighters. In case you've never seen a Kojay Snyder Cut Fighters, you've got people in the movement in there. And I know you haven't shown them in a while, but you even have like a build for Zach. A build.
Yeah, I do. He's special. I see him for special things.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. A plug for my channel on my channel. I appreciate that, man. That's love. But yeah, on that note, November 5th, hashtag release the air cut, and do the things, like and subscribe, follow my boy here, Reasons I'm Broke, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you so much for being on the show, man. Mad love to you always. And
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hey, and all you out there, you know what to do. Hit the bell like you want it, and like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Catch you later.